So hi again from Munich, FCK.FM. We got again the pleasure to have Alex Skolnick from Testament with us.
Hello.
And we are the second part of our interview now. Testament is playing tonight on the backstage at the Bass Strikes Back tour, and together with Exodus and Death Angel, and we're really happy to have you here for the interview.
It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
In the second part, we're going to talk about the 80s Bay Area and about the scene, and kind of in the 80s, the Bay Area was kind of like the Sunset Strip for thrash metal. You can say it like that.
Yeah, it sounds a little funny. just because we, in the Bay Area at that time, we always looked at the Sunset Strip. It was like kind of silly. Yeah, people wearing like hairspray and fishnets and scarves. Men, I'm talking about. And but I understand it as far as like a scene.
Because
there was a musical scene.
Yeah, the thrash metal scene.
Yeah.
Taking place in the Bay Area.
And I think over time, like there's been more mutual respect as far, especially at least as far as the music.
Yeah.
Because even like a lot of those bands, they've outgrown the fashion. Yeah. You can talk to somebody like George Lynch and somebody, they'll make jokes about what they wore back then. Rudy Sarzo is a friend of mine. He'll post photos of him sometimes with the huge hair. And,
that's it, man.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
That's what it was. But yeah, we had our own scene, and it was sort of we were the opposite of that. But we were it was around the same time.
And how do you think that the Bay Area scene developed since then, or what did change?
Well, I think it was interesting with the Bay Area scene because whereas I'll compare it again to the LA scene.
Yeah.
Because you have a few groups, several groups from that scene that just reached tremendous heights as far as like mainstream sales and explosion. So to me, like probably the biggest one would be Guns N' Roses. But even before Guns N' Roses, Motley Crue was already going, and even some of the bands like surrounding those bands, Rat, Motley Crue, Poison. These are bands that like sold millions of records. That was not the case in the San Francisco Bay Area. We had one band that just ended up being this massive band. Obviously, that's Metallica.
Of course,
And most of the other bands, even ones like Exodus, who we're on tour with tonight, that had this direct connection with Metallica. All the other bands sort of remained underground bands. So I think as the scene developed, it was harder for, again, there weren't as many bands that reached that level of the LA bands. So maybe that has something to do with the fact that in the 90s, it just became much more underground. Some of the bands broke up, a lot of them changed members, and it just, the whole scene kind of went quiet for a while. And then it started coming back together in the 2000s. And there was this very well-known concert called the Thrash of the Titans, which is a play on Clash of the Titans, in which it was a benefit for our singer Chuck Billy, who's in great health now. But at the time, he had a cancer scare, and this benefit show reunited a lot of bands. Death Angel hadn't played together in a long time. Yeah, they reunited that day. I don't think Exodus was functioning at that point. So they played Anthrax with Joey Belladonna. I believe that was the first time they'd gotten back together. And of course Testament. We had just done that one show. And it would be a few years before we started playing regularly, but it was enough to sort of plant a seed. And then years later, I don't know, it's just amazing. Like everybody started doing albums. There became enough of a scene for us to tour yet. We weren't like dependent on the local scene either. I think we were greatly helped by what's happening over here in Europe. Right? Festivals like Wacken started popping up. And that's the big one, but even like some of the smaller ones, like Dynamo Festival in Netherlands, which was one of the original festivals, the first festival the Testament ever played at. They invited us over. And just, fast forward a few years, like every summer there are these festivals. They're wonderful. Now every country has them. It's almost like sports. They're like competing. France decided they had to have a festival. They created Hellfest, and it's one of our favorite ones to do.
It's amazing,
Slovenia has a festival, even the smaller nations, and it's really a thing over here. So it's I think it's really helped breathe new life into a lot of the bands, as well as I spoke about this in our last interview. People just growing up, getting over whatever issues they had, becoming friends. It's really nice, becoming friends again, and just playing for the fun of it, and not being kind of trapped by career ideas. Like, okay, let's just play, we'll do a show, we don't, one step at a time. We don't have to make one. And then the tours came along, album plans came along, and it made sense.
And are there any new or newer Thrash bands from the Bay Area that you would recommend, or that you would say could have a career?
I'm not the one to answer that because I don't live in the Bay Area anymore. I've lived in New York since the late 90s. I hear that I've heard that there are some Thrash bands. I think there's Thrash bands all over. I know, ironically, LA, which used to be one of the toughest places to play because it was, we felt like such outsiders. That's become like a thrash capital.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Well, you have a very big Latin community there. And there's just a lot of Latin Netherlands, and they're some of the best fans. And they come out, they show up. There's a whole scene of kind of heavy bands in LA.
That's cool. It's amazing.
Yeah, and I know New York has some as well, but I'm a little out of the loop as far as.
You've been touring all that.
I'm also touring a lot. When I'm
you're
home.
Busy, not only with Testament, you have so many projects right now that you're working on. You're always
So I do a lot of music outside of metal. I'm with artists that are removed from this world, and I'm so busy. I don't have time to go to a lot of local shows.
I'm sure you don't.
I'd like to, and once in a while. I'll have a friend or a former student or something that's playing a show, and I'll go. But I'm just so busy working on.
I always wonder how you're doing that. You do Testament, you also do the Alex Skolnick Trio. How do you manage to do all that together and being like that busy?
Well, there's a lot of planning, a lot of looking at calendars. That's the main thing. Usually for the last few years, the Testament schedule is set pretty far in advance. So I usually have a pretty good idea of when Testament's going to be on tour or in the studio, and then I can plan the other things around it. I also just, I'm very careful not to book like two different tours next to each other. Or two different places. Like once I'm home from a tour, I have this period. Usually it's a few days of just nothing. Because
it's necessary to just.
Just to refocus and recharge and just rest. A lot of rest periods. But also, there's a lot of there's time on these tours. today may not be a great example. I had a guitar interview with the German Guitar Magazine on the View, which is a pleasure.
You gotta say that now.
We're working on some new music that we're introducing into the set. We have our photographer out here, Gene Ambo, and we're doing stuff. So these few days are pretty busy. But normally, we get to a point in the tour, all it is that the show, the time we're on stage. It's like 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Let's say maybe 90 minutes or so before that, getting into it. But it's these large periods of time.
Yeah.
So that those other periods of time, I can be working on my laptop, I can be writing music for my trio or whoever, I can be approving mixes. There's so much other stuff I can be doing.
Talking about the Alex Skolnick Trio, I always wondered how did you develop the passion for jazz besides the metal? What you're doing, was it always a passion for you, like both kinds of genres, or?
It really happened naturally.
Okay.
I think that falling into playing music that's I guess you could call it jazz guitar, even though it's sort of a limited term, because there's more. If you see the show, there's much more than that.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, it's jazz improvisation, but there's funk, there's blues, there's even like some Nashville flavor. We go, it goes a lot of places, but you could call it jazz improvisation because there is that, and there is a jazz vocabulary there, and there was never, when I was younger, it was never an intention. I never said, the way I saw, my heroes were, Randy Rhoads, Eddie Van Halen, Kiss before that. So I saw, these guys with the guitars and the big walls of amplifiers and
the big stuff.
I didn't see people like sitting at tables sipping wine. But then, within a few years, after my first few years of touring and doing, the heavy rock thing on a high level, I don't know what it is. Maybe I needed balance. But I just developed this really strong taste for this music, and I just kept, I went to a few shows. I got turned on to some great jazz albums, and I just started liking it more and more, and it was just a really nice balance from the other music. And I would hear, there were some musicians I would go to hear, like maybe there'd be like a classroom size audience, just sitting at a table, like listening, and it wouldn't have interested me when I was like 12 years old. By the time I was 20, I was like, oh, this is really cool. They're listening to every note.
It's not so much about the show, it's more about the music itself.
It's not about the show at all, yeah. It's not about the scene.
Yeah.
And I think at that time I was getting just a little bit jaded, because I felt like, part of the problem was that at this period, the sound systems were still really bad. They've gotten better. It was hard to hear yourself. Now we have like in-ear monitors, and we have this technology that makes it so. I remember I played one show, and somebody, stage diver, came up and grabbed the coy cable, unplugged my guitar, which not the end of the world. I don't even know if he meant to do it, but it was like nobody noticed. I didn't care that he did. The point was, you would think, oh, my guitar just got unplugged. People are going to look over, hey, fix it. You couldn't even tell because the sound was just like. So at that point, I was just really getting attracted to the idea of music where you can hear every note. Right? And even though I'd be playing for a very small audience, the guitar would be playing a very big part. So so that ended up just really, it became more and more, it felt more and more natural just to develop that side of my playing. And I didn't know where it would go. I didn't know if I would just end up being a teacher, because I also know, it's the world of jazz. There's people that have done nothing but that music all their lives, and they're not being recognized. So, who am I to step in as like this, guy from this whole other crazy world? But after, after a number of years, it just made more and more sense. And I took a period of my life where I was just pretty much just doing that. But then when the Testament reunion period came up, that also wasn't planned. But it just felt natural. And I said, you know what? This side doesn't have to not exist.
No.
Just because I'm doing the, and now it's this cool balance.
Sounds good.
Testament's, doing bigger and better shows than we've ever done. The music I've done with both of my trio and some other artists I work with, it's like most of my favorite music I've done. I've got more trio music that's coming out. I've got some work I'm doing in a few months with a saxophonist that I work with for his band, and it's some really cool music. So it took a while to develop, but I ended up developing this thing, the guy who plays in a thrash metal band, but also does jazz guitar. It's crazy.
Yeah, it opens a completely new horizon to do that. Right?
Yeah. But also, you know what, I realized too, just because I couldn't think of anybody who'd done that.
Yeah.
That's no reason not to do it.
Yeah. It's not just something like a law, like you only have to do metal because you've done metal in the past. You can do whatever you want to do. It's great that you're doing that.
I used to get a lot of criticism for it.
Did you?
Oh yeah.
The Testament friends about you.
Yeah, especially once, like the early days of the internet. Yeah, once I...
Trolls or...
my introduction to trolls.
Oh shit. What happened?
Yeah, just these idiots, telling, once message boards and comment sections started,
Horrible.
Yeah, go play your jazz, stay out of the band is better without this guy, screw this guy, he just wants a paycheck. Like what? At that time, what paycheck? It's changed a lot, though. It's funny though, because gradually, I don't know if they become more accepting. Maybe they grow up and they have better things to do eventually, sitting in their mom's basement just typing a bunch of crap. But it seems like I kind of found this place. I'm sure there's some people that don't get it, but it's nothing like it used to be. And then I've also met bands since then where it's, the musicians are totally open to other types of music.
That's great. And I think talking again about all this trolling on the internet, I think that's really the bad part about social media and about all that stuff, that everybody can just express their opinion about anything without any regrets, anything, just talking what they think.
Without it being looked at, without anybody sort of moderating it.
Yeah. It's a horrible thing.
I'm sure you've experienced that.
Yeah, I did. I love that,
It's ridiculous. But I guess I learned to deal with that. Because I have scandals. Like I consider it my semi-annual scandal. You're supposed to have like a semi-annual checkup at the doctor. So I have a semi-annual scandal.
Oh yeah.
And it's usually when I comment about, it often happens during, I don't know if this one will create one.
Let's see what we're talking
about.
What we're gonna do.
But it's always like I'll answer a question. And I'm pretty honest. I don't sugarcoat anything I say. And so, sometimes some of these websites, they'll look for something controversial. Now, usually it's some issue, like something political, or I'll post something. Like I'm I have a lot of concern about the gun problem in the United States. I am not far from the only one. It's very obvious it should be a thing, but for some reason it gets a lot of people angry if you express an opinion about this. And I happen to express an opinion around the same time as Dee Snider and a bunch of other people, Nikki Sixx, Tom. And then next thing you know, these articles are coming out, putting us together, which is fine, because I'm in agreement with them and I like all these guys, but that's the new thing. So I get told for that. Or sometimes it's a thing like the latest one was actually pretty harmless. Billie Eilish, yeah. I had, that was actually a refreshing to have.
It's funny to read that. Maybe you can explain a little bit what happened to our audience.
Yeah, so that was the thing. I was doing an interview like this one, and it was a very interesting question. You know, would you consider working with like somebody who's the biggest pop star in the world? And at the moment, that happens to be Billie Eilish.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, a few years ago, maybe it would be Katy Perry, in which case I think I'd say no. I mean, it depends who it is, and it depends what it was. I've nothing against her, but I'm not really a fan of her music, but I know enough about Billie Eilish that for her age, I'm kind of amazed at
Yeah, like the Bond song with age 18 or something like that.
Yeah, what she's doing at age 18, and the fact that, it's
incredible.
Yeah, it's not manufactured. It doesn't seem like, she needs auto-tune and like this whole pop music. Yeah, so I just answered honestly, yes, I would absolutely work with her. And of course, headlines start going out. Alex Skolnick would work with Billie Eilish. And people start arguing, she sucks. No, she's great. Yeah, well, he sucks. Anyway. But that one was fine. But sometimes they get really crazy, especially with politics. There's a presidential election coming out.
Oh yeah.
I don't hold my breath.
Should we maybe ask you about that? So you have a new scandal from our show here.
Yeah, I mean, I just express my opinion. It's so funny because I have this kind of support group on Twitter, which is it's become that with Tracy Guns from LA Guns, and I have this other guy, Peter Thorne, who he's like a studio touring guy, but he played for Chris Cornell.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of his old we're all outspoken about politics, and we end up supporting each other, and we're all pretty closely. Well, we don't agree on everything, but we're pretty closely aligned. And we're just constantly responding to each other, retweeting each other.
So you make your own kind of politics troll group.
Oh yeah. And sometimes we take on the trolls together. It's fun.
That's very cool.
Yeah, and you have to have a sense of humor about it.
Sure.
And you can't get bogged down about it. And also, there are times where you just have to block someone if somebody is just clearly. If you have somebody being really negative about you, and then you look at their feed, and you see all they do is go and spread negative things about everybody they can.
Yeah.
You're not going to convert that person. You're not going to be friends with that person.
All right. I want to talk about something else to you, and I know that another huge thing that you're doing is photography. And so I would like to know how this passion developed in you. And I saw you also have a profile on Instagram where you show the pictures that you did with your Leica Q. And how did that happen? How did you find your passion for photography?
This is another thing that just wasn't planned.
Right.
And I say this sort of to connect it to an earlier question, which was about the whole jazz instrumental side. That wasn't planned either. I just found myself very passionate about this music and just developing it. Being in a rock band, that was planned. I knew from the time I was like 10 years old, all right, I'm going to do that. But just like the jazz guitar thing wasn't planned, photography wasn't planned. And photography is a very recent thing.
It is.
And over time I've taken an occasional picture where some folks will say, that's really my good quality photo. Did you ever think about taking more more pictures like that? And I just never really took it serious. The last thing I need is more stuff to do.
I can imagine, yeah.
But then I'm good friends with my friend Randy Blythe, that goes by Emmanuel Blythe, who is probably best known as the singer from Lamb of God, but he's also a hell of a photographer. He has a full career as a photographer, if he wants one.
Okay.
He's obviously busy right now, but he is just, really good, next level. And he had seen some of my photographs and just said, you need to be shooting on a real camera.
Were you doing all those pictures before with your phone, or how did you do?
Some of them were on my phone, and we were briefly part of a print magazine called Unbuilt.
Yeah.
That had an assignment for each of us to sort of pass around an instant camera and for a photo collage.
Oh, okay.
And he just said, there's all these things in photography that you're doing, even if you don't realize you're doing it. And just things with the framing and the corners and the balance and
positioning and everything like that.
Yeah. And when I did this, I did find myself, just really going into this creative state. That's not that different from music creation.
Not so much, no.
I mean, the process is different. The activity is different, but that flow. You're not even thinking. You're just, you have this idea and you're capturing it. So I kept going into that. And then just a short time later, I guess it might have been around the same time, we were on tour together. And this was the Slayer farewell tour. And he just loaned me one of his Leicas. And then just said, just hang on to it, take it in. And that really did it. I got hooked. And, of course I had to give it back.
No.
They're not cheap cameras.
Yeah, of course not.
But I really missed it. And that was really the test. It's like, okay, dude, if I'm going to do this, I'm not going to just... And I've done this a few times with, where I'll make a decision. Okay, if I'm going to get a new toy, and it's going to be, I want to get a really good toy, but I have to take it seriously.
Sure.
I did that. My first jazz guitar. I said, either I'm going to get this side of my playing together, or the guitar goes back. And it was a very similar thing. I want this camera. I don't want to start small and work my way up to the Leica, because then by not having that camera, maybe I won't be inspired. I'm just going to do it.
Yeah.
So,
Got you.
So I got it, and it's so great because I travel a lot, and there's just so many opportunities for travel photography by being on tour. And it's been great. So it's kind of caused me to throw myself into it. And I'm always learning, but I feel like I've come a long way in a pretty short time, and I'm having fun.
What did you do as far as pictures? What did you photograph?
Well, the city centers out here are a lot of fun. We were in Vienna yesterday, and it's so different from the United States, because there's so much history. The buildings have been around a long time. The town squares, right? The town squares have been around for hundreds of years, and they're works of art, and they're so fun to photograph. And yeah, sometimes I like to capture little scenes. You know, I got one where today where there's pigeons flying, and there's a guy noticing me. He's actually trying to get out of the frame, but he's looking straight at the frame, and these pigeons are right behind him, and it looks like it's all meant to happen. And it's fun to sort of capture these scenes. I took one in Berlin at the concert house, gigging market. I don't even know how to say that. The square. Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And it looks so cool. It almost looks like a big chessboard. Dave Hall.
Yeah, right.
Just at the end of last year. That was incredible. Fascinating. And it was photographer's dream. There's just so much photograph, but also just the culture is so different.
So we slowly come to an end of our interview. The last question would be, what are your plans for the future? Because everything what you're doing right now is really successful. Are there even things that you want to achieve still?
Oh yeah, I mean there's always
the sky's the limit, no?
Yeah, there's always new mountains to climb.
Yeah.
I think I just want to get better at whatever. Yeah, that's a big part of it. It's just being better, and I feel like there's certain things like playing technical metal guitar solo. Like I think I kind of have that down. I'm not worried about that. Yeah. But yeah, definitely the photography is really opened up this whole new passion, and I think I want to combine it with music somehow.
So what do you think about?
I'm not exactly sure yet, but I know one of a musician I'm a big fan of is Andy Summers from The Police, and he's been doing photo exhibits where he's creating special music just around the photographs. So I don't know if it exactly like that, but maybe something like that, and then just I mean it's hard to think of new things. So it's just like the stuff that I'm doing is kind of requires reinvention. It's always I can't do the same trio album that I did last time. Yeah. It has to be different. So actually what I am doing is going to be very different. I can't say too much about it, but I will say I believe it's going to involve other musicians as well, with like the trio as a core. But it's kind of it's a part I haven't explored as much yet, and I'm pretty excited about it. There's also so little time with the touring this year and the new record and everything, with the New Testament record. I think what's going to happen is I'm going to do singles. I'm going to try doing a song at a time instead of hanging everything on this album. I think it'll eventually be an album, but I've already been in the studio, recorded some new music for the trio, and it's different. It's totally different. Wow. And I think even people that aren't really fans of jazz guitar will like it. It's just a totally different, but it's going to be a song at a time. So I'm going to try that approach and see how that goes.
Okay, so we're at the end of our interview for today. The last words are on you. If there's anything that you want to tell our fans here.
What can I say? Danke. I'm so grateful for the fans. I started as a fan. I'm still a fan, and that's everything we do is made possible by the fans. So I'm just grateful, and without you fans, we are nothing. Nobody would listen.
Right.
Nobody would see the pictures right there, you know. So it's just to have this audience that listens and pays attention to our creations. It's just wonderful. Done.
So thank you very much for being with us here today in Backstage Munich.
I'm glad you did.
For our time here and for our interview.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. It's good to see you out here doing something new yourself. You're very good at it.
Thank you very much. Really
You enjoy
appreciate
it?
that.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it too.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited to see the show tonight.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun one.
Yeah, I'm sure about that.
Munich.
Yeah, Munich. Thank you guys for watching. If you like what you just saw here, please give us a like and hit the notification button and subscribe to our channel. And see you next time on FCK.FM. Bye.
FCK.FM.